After my son died, my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "You have nothing left here. Get out." She locked me out of the house with only a suitcase. But when the lawyer read my son's final letter, everyone learned who he really left everything to. And it wasn't her. Stay with me, because you won't believe how this story unfolds. And before we continue, make sure to subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Marion, and I am 69 years old. For years, my life was simple but full. I lived with my son Daniel, his wife Vanessa, and my granddaughter Sophie. Our home wasn't grand, but it was filled with love, at least when Daniel was alive. He was a good man, kind and hardworking, and he always reminded me, "Mom, you'll always have a place with me. This house is as much yours as it is mine." His words made me feel safe, even when I sometimes felt like a burden in Vanessa's eyes. Vanessa was never warm toward me. She thought of me as old-fashioned, someone in the way. She barely tolerated my presence, though Daniel's love kept the peace between us. The only one who always lit up around me was Sophie. At 15, she had her father's heart. She would sit beside me, listen to my stories, and say, "Grandma, don't worry, I'll always need you." Her love gave me strength. When Daniel suddenly passed away, my world shattered. I lost not just my son, but my anchor, the one person who always made sure I felt secure. I was drowning in grief, but what I didn't know then was that my pain was about to be made worse by the cruelty of the very person who should have offered me comfort. The days after Daniel's funeral were a blur of tears, silence, and empty rooms that once felt alive with his voice. I wandered through the house like a ghost, touching his jacket still hanging by the door, the mug he always used, the chair at the dining table where he once sat. Every corner reminded me of him, and I clung to those memories to keep from falling apart. But while I was drowning in grief, Vanessa seemed to grow colder. At first, I thought it was her way of handling loss. She didn't cry at the funeral. She didn't sit with Sophie to comfort her. Instead, she kept herself busy, moving around the house with quick, sharp movements, making phone calls, and speaking in clipped tones. 3 days after the funeral, she approached me in the kitchen. Her eyes were icy, her arms crossed. "Marion," she said flatly, "you need to understand something. Daniel is gone, and with him gone, you don't belong here anymore." I froze, the dish towel in my hand slipping to the floor. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice trembling. She looked at me without pity. "You have nothing left here. You're not family anymore. This is my house now. You need to pack your things and leave." Her words pierced me deeper than any knife. My knees felt weak, and I gripped the counter for support. "Vanessa, please," I whispered. "This is my home too. Daniel promised me I would always have a place here. And Sophie, she needs me. Don't do this." But Vanessa didn't flinch. Her lips curled into a smirk. "Sophie has me. She doesn't need you filling her head with your old-fashioned ideas. You're just a reminder of the past. It's time for you to move on." Tears stung my eyes as I begged, "Please, at least let me stay until I can figure out what to do." "No," she snapped. "You can leave today. I'll help you pack." And she did. With cold efficiency, she went to my room, pulling clothes from my drawers, tossing them into a worn suitcase. She didn't care if the clothes wrinkled, if the fabric tore. She moved like someone erasing me from her life as quickly as possible. I stood in the doorway, powerless, clutching Daniel's photograph to my chest while she shoved the rest of my life into one bag. When she finished, she pushed the suitcase toward me. "There," she said. "Take your things and go." My voice cracked as I whispered, "Where will I go?" "That's not my problem," she replied coldly. Then she opened the front door, set the suitcase on the porch, and looked me straight in the eyes. "Goodbye, Marion. Don't come back." She closed the door, and I heard the sound of the lock clicking. I stood on the porch, clutching Daniel's photo, my suitcase at my feet, the house behind me suddenly feeling like a stranger. The home I had built with my son was gone, just like him. As I stood there in the fading light, the door suddenly opened again. Sophie rushed out, tears streaming down her face. "Grandma!" she cried, throwing her arms around me. "Please don't go." Dad wouldn't want this. I hugged her tightly, my own tears falling into her hair. "I know, sweetheart," I whispered, "but I don't have a choice right now. Be strong and remember that I love you." Vanessa's sharp voice rang out from inside. "Sophie, get back in here." Sophie pulled away reluctantly, her eyes full of pain. "Grandma, don't let her win," she said, before running back inside. The door slammed shut again, and I was left alone. With trembling hands, I picked up my suitcase and walked down the street toward my sister's house. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though I were carrying not just clothes, but the weight of betrayal. My mind replayed Daniel's promises, his warm voice saying, "Mom, you'll always have a place with me." And now here I was, locked out by the very woman he had trusted to be his wife. When I reached my sister Margaret's house, she opened the door and gasped at the sight of me. "Marion, what happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. I broke down in her arms, sobbing. "She threw me out. She said I have nothing left here." Margaret held me tightly, whispering, "You do have something left. You have me." And maybe, just maybe, Daniel left. You more than she realizes. At that moment, I didn't understand what she meant. All I knew was that I had lost my son, my home, and the family I thought I still had. But Margaret's words planted a seed of hope in me, a tiny spark in the darkness. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was that Daniel had left behind more than memories. He had left behind a final letter, and in that letter lay the truth that would turn everything upside down. At my sister Margaret's house, I tried to adjust to my new reality, but nothing felt right. Her home was warm and welcoming, and she cared for me as only a sister could. But in my heart, I still felt displaced. Each night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of the house I had been forced to leave, the smell of Daniel's cologne lingering in the hallway, the sound of Sophie's laughter in the living room. Those memories weren't just precious. They were my entire reason for living. Losing Daniel was unbearable, but being told I had no place in his home made me feel as if I had been erased. Margaret tried to comfort me. One evening, as she poured me a cup of tea, she said, "Marion, you can't let Vanessa treat you like this. Daniel loved you. He wouldn't have wanted you thrown out like garbage. I have a feeling he left more behind than she realizes." Her words gave me pause. I had been so consumed by grief that I hadn't thought much about Daniel's affairs. My son had always been thoughtful, always planning ahead, always making sure the people he loved were cared for. I remembered how he used to say, "Mom, don't ever worry. I'll always protect you, even if I'm not around." At the time, I thought it was just his way of easing my fears. But now, those words echoed with new meaning. Then came the letter from the lawyer's office. It was addressed to both Vanessa and me, summoning us for the official reading of Daniel's will and final letter. My heart raced as I held the envelope in my hands. Margaret leaned over my shoulder and read it with me. "This is it," she said firmly. "This is where the truth will come out." For days leading up to the appointment, I felt torn between dread and hope. Vanessa carried herself as if nothing could shake her. She told relatives that Daniel had left everything to her, and she said it with such arrogance that people believed her. When word spread about the reading, she laughed in my face and said, "You'll hear it straight from the lawyer soon enough. Daniel knew I was his future, not you. When he left, you lost your place." Her cruelty made my stomach twist, but I held my tongue. I had no proof yet, only faith in my son's love and character. Deep down, I believed he would never abandon me. Not after all the years I raised him alone after his father died. Not after all the nights I stayed up helping him study, working 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Daniel was not a perfect man, but he was a good man, and he never forgot what family meant. On the morning of the reading, I dressed carefully. I chose a dark green dress that Daniel had once said brought out the color of my eyes. My hands shook as I pinned on a small brooch Richard, my late husband, had given me long ago. Margaret squeezed my shoulders and said, "You walk in there with your head held high. You're his mother. Nothing can change that." When I arrived at the lawyer's office, Vanessa was already there. She wore a sharp red suit, her makeup flawless, her smile smug. Michael wasn't in this story, but Sophie sat quietly next to her mother, her eyes downcast. When she saw me, she gave me a tiny smile and mouthed, "I love you." That gave me strength. Vanessa leaned toward me as I took my seat and whispered, "Don't embarrass yourself today. When you hear that Daniel left it all to me, I don't want you crying in front of everyone. Accept your place and move on." I didn't reply. Instead, I folded my hands in my lap and prayed silently for strength. The lawyer entered the room and sat at the large wooden desk, opening a thick folder. He adjusted his glasses and looked at us with calm seriousness. "Thank you all for coming. We are here to read the last will and testament of Daniel White, as well as a personal letter he requested be shared with his family." The air grew heavy. Vanessa leaned back in her chair with a smirk, ready to bask in her imagined victory. Sophie sat rigid, her hands clenched in her lap. I felt my pulse in my ears as the lawyer began to unfold the paper. At that moment, I knew everything was about to change. For weeks, I had lived with humiliation, grief, and fear of the future. But here, in this small office, my son's voice would speak again, and the truth would finally be revealed. The lawyer cleared his throat, and the entire room fell silent. He unfolded a letter, the paper crisp but weighted with emotion, and began to read. His voice was steady, but every word carried Daniel's presence back into the room. "To my wife, Vanessa," the lawyer read, "I want to thank you for the years we shared. You gave me a daughter, and for that, I will always be grateful. But I also need to be honest. I know we struggled, and I know my mother never felt welcome in her own home once you moved in. That has been a weight on my heart." Vanessa's smirk faltered. She shifted in her seat, glancing around nervously. Her confidence wavered for the first time since I walked in. The lawyer continued, "To my daughter Sophie, you are the best part of me. You are kind, intelligent, and strong, and I want you to always remember where you came from. Never let anyone tell you who to love or how to treat family. You will always have your grandmother to guide you." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. She turned to look at me and whispered, "I knew he wouldn't forget you, Grandma." My hand shook as I reached for hers, and she gripped it tightly. The lawyer took a deep breath and then read the final part, the part that made Vanessa's face turn white. "To my mother, Marion, you gave me life. You raised me alone when Dad passed, and you never let me go without love. Everything I am today, I owe to you. That is why I am leaving the house, the savings, and full guardianship of Sophie to you. I trust you to care for her, and I know you will protect what matters most in our family. My mother is the heart of this home, and she will always have everything she needs." Gasps filled the room. My chest heaved as tears rolled down my cheeks. My son's words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, as if he were right there telling me, "Mom, I promised I'd protect you." Vanessa shot up from her chair, her face flushed red with rage. "This is a lie. Daniel would never do this. He loved me. He trusted me. You're making this up." The lawyer calmly placed the letter back into the folder. "Mrs. White, this was prepared and signed months before his passing. It is valid and witnessed. There is no mistake. Marion White is the rightful heir, and she is now Sophie's legal guardian." Vanessa's jaw dropped. She looked at Sophie, who refused to meet her eyes, then at me with pure fury. "You planned this! You turned him against me," she spat. I finally found my voice. My grief had kept me silent for weeks, but Daniel's words gave me strength. I looked her directly in the eye and said, "No, Vanessa, you turned him against yourself. Daniel saw the way you treated me. He saw the cruelty, the coldness, and he made his choice, not out of anger, but out of love." The room went quiet again. Vanessa's hands trembled as she tried to gather herself. She opened her mouth to argue, but no sound came out. For once, she had no power, no audience, no control. Michael wasn't in this story, but Sophie was, and she leaned against me, crying, "Grandma, Dad knew. He knew everything." "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered, stroking her hair. "He knew. And he made sure we'd be okay. Vanessa grabbed her purse, muttering under her breath, and stormed out of the lawyer's office. The sound of the door slamming echoed like thunder, but this time, instead of shattering me, it freed me. The lawyer handed me the folder with Daniel's will. "Your son was a very thoughtful man," he said softly. "He wanted to make sure you were protected." I nodded through my tears. That's who he was. He always kept his promises. Walking out of that office, I felt taller. The pain of losing Daniel would never leave me, but the humiliation Vanessa had tried to force on me was gone. Daniel's final words had restored my dignity and my place in the family. He had given me back not just the house and the finances, but my voice, my worth, and my bond with Sophie. For weeks I had been told I had nothing left, that I was no one. But in the end, my son made sure everyone knew the truth. I was not invisible. I was not unwanted. I was and always would be the heart of his home. Walking out of the lawyer's office that day, I felt a mix of grief and relief wash over me. My son was gone, and no letter could erase that pain. But his final words gave me something I hadn't felt since the day we buried him. Dignity. He had made sure I wasn't forgotten, that I wasn't erased, and that I still had a place in the life he built. For weeks, Vanessa's cruelty had made me feel like a burden, like I was standing on borrowed ground. But Daniel's voice, carried through that letter, had put me back on solid earth. When I arrived at my sister Margaret's house, she was waiting by the door, her eyes searching my face. I held out the folder from the lawyer and whispered, "He didn't forget me." She pulled me into her arms, her own tears spilling down her cheeks. "Of course he didn't," she said firmly. "Daniel was your son. He knew who you were and what you meant to him. Vanessa's lies could never erase that." That night, I sat at the kitchen table and read Daniel's letter again and again. Each word felt like a conversation I thought I had lost forever. His gratitude, his trust, his love for me and Sophie, it was all there in black and white. For the first time since he passed, I slept peacefully. The following week, I returned to the house, this time not as a guest or a tolerated figure, but as the rightful owner. The front door that Vanessa had once locked against me now opened freely, the keys resting in my palm where they belonged. Sophie ran to me the moment I stepped inside, throwing her arms around me. "Grandma, I knew Dad wouldn't leave you behind," she said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. I held her tightly, my heart swelling. "He didn't, sweetheart. He made sure of it. And now we'll keep this house together, just like your father wanted." From that moment on, the house began to feel alive again. It was no longer a place of tension and bitterness. Sophie and I worked side by side to restore it to what it once was, a home filled with love. We cooked meals together in the kitchen, tended the flowers Daniel had planted in the backyard, and filled the rooms with laughter that had been missing for too long. Vanessa, however, was forced to face a reality she could not control. She no longer had the power to threaten me or treat me like a burden. If she wished to stay near Sophie, she had no choice but to live under the shadow of my son's will. Her arrogance had been silenced, her control stripped away. She moved through the house quietly now, speaking less, avoiding me altogether. For once, the power she loved to wield was gone. Michael isn't part of this story, but extended family who once whispered in Vanessa's favor now looked at her differently. Some even apologized to me for believing her. "We should have known Daniel wouldn't forget you," one cousin said. "We let her words blind us." I accepted their apologies, not out of pride, but because I knew holding on to bitterness would only poison me further. My focus now was Sophie. She became my purpose, my anchor. Every evening we sat together, talking about her father, sharing stories about his childhood, laughing at memories that once made me cry. One night she looked at me and said, "Grandma, I feel like Dad left you here to be my shield." My throat tightened, but I smiled through my tears. "He did, sweetheart, and I'll never let you down." The lesson I took from all of this was simple but powerful. People may try to strip you of your place, to silence you, to make you feel invisible, but love cannot be erased. My son's love carried through death, protecting me when I could not protect myself. His foresight reminded me that age does not make you weak, and cruelty does not make someone strong. What lasts in this world is love, loyalty, and the truth that no one can take away what is rightfully yours when it's protected by those who truly care. Now, as I sit in the living room with Sophie beside me, the house feels whole again. It isn't just wood and brick. It is memory, promise, and legacy. Daniel gave me more than property in his will. He gave me my place back in the family, and the chance to show my granddaughter that strength does not come from power or cruelty, but from love that endures. To those listening to my story, I want you to remember this. Even when life tries to push you out, hold on to the truth of who you are and the love of those who truly value you. That is what will carry you through. And if you've stayed with me to the end, thank you for being here. Please subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts.